Vladimir Putin is a Russian politician who has been serving as the President or Prime Minister of Russia since 1999. He was born on October 7, 1952, in Leningrad, now known as St. Petersburg, Russia. Putin's political career began in the early 1990s when he served in various positions within the Russian government. He was appointed as the director of the Federal Security Service, FSB, in 1998, and later became the Prime Minister of Russia in 1999. In 2000, Putin was elected as the President of Russia for the first time, and he served 2 consecutive terms until 2008. He then became the Prime Minister again for 4 years, and in 2012, he was re-elected as President for a 3rd term. In 2018, Putin won his 4th presidential term, which he is currently serving. During his time in power, Putin has been involved in a number of controversial actions and policies, including the annexation of Crimea, the Russian military intervention in Syria, and accusations of election interference in foreign countries. However, he is also credited with stabilizing the Russian economy and restoring the country's global influence. According to Forbes, Putin's net worth is estimated to be around $70 billion, which would make him one of the richest people in the world. However, it's worth noting that this estimate is largely speculative and has not been confirmed. Some of the assets that have been linked to Putin include a $1 billion palace on the Black Sea, several yachts, and a fleet of luxury cars. He has also been rumored to have significant ownership stakes in Russian energy companies, including Gazprom and Rosneft. However, it's important to note that Putin has denied these allegations and has said that he lives on a modest salary as the President of Russia. Ultimately, the true extent of Putin's wealth and assets remains unclear, and much of the information available is based on speculation and rumors. Forbes has estimated Putin's net worth to be around $70 billion, which would make him one of the richest people in the world. However, it's important to note that this estimate is largely speculative and has not been confirmed. It's worth noting that Putin has denied having significant personal wealth and has said that he lives on a modest salary as the President of Russia. In a 2018 interview with Austrian broadcaster ORF, Putin said, "I have never had any personal belongings, any property or any accounts abroad." Overall, while there is speculation about Putin's net worth, the true extent of his wealth and assets remains unclear, and it's challenging to accurately estimate his net worth. Vladimir Putin's involvement in the Syrian conflict began in 2015 when he ordered the deployment of Russian military forces to support the regime of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. The Russian intervention was intended to bolster the Syrian government's efforts to combat various rebel groups and jihadist organizations that had been fighting to overthrow Assad since the start of the Syrian civil war in 2011. Since 2015, Russian military forces have conducted airstrikes against opposition-held areas, provided air support to pro-Assad ground forces, and carried out ground operations themselves. The Russian military's intervention in Syria has been a significant factor in shifting the balance of power in favor of the Syrian government, allowing it to retake large swaths of territory from opposition forces. Putin has defended Russia's military involvement in Syria as a necessary measure to combat terrorism and stabilize the region. He has also called for a political solution to the conflict and has supported diplomatic efforts to end the war. However, Putin's actions in Syria have also been the subject of significant criticism, particularly from Western countries and human rights organizations. There have been numerous reports of civilian casualties resulting from Russian airstrikes, and Putin has been accused of supporting war crimes committed by the Syrian government and its allies. Additionally, the conflict has resulted in significant displacement and suffering for millions of Syrian civilians. Since the Russian military intervention in Syria began in 2015, Putin's actions in the conflict have had significant geopolitical implications and have been the subject of much debate and criticism. Here are some additional details. Support for the Syrian government. Putin's support for the Syrian government has been driven in part by a desire to protect Russian interests in the Middle East and maintain a strategic ally in the region. Syria is home to Russia's only naval base in the Mediterranean, and Russia has long-standing military and economic ties with the Syrian government. Military intervention. Russia's military intervention in Syria has involved airstrikes, ground operations, and the deployment of military advisors and equipment. The Russian military has primarily targeted opposition-held areas, including those held by jihadist organizations like ISIS and Jabhat al-Nusra, now known as Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. Criticism of civilian casualties. There have been numerous reports of civilian casualties resulting from Russian airstrikes in Syria, including attacks on hospitals, schools, and other civilian targets. Human rights organizations and Western governments have criticized Russia for these actions and accused it of committing war crimes. Political solutions. While Putin has supported military action to combat terrorism in Syria, he has also emphasized the importance of finding a political solution to the conflict. Russia has been involved in diplomatic efforts to end the war, including participating in peace talks in Geneva and hosting talks in Sochi with representatives from the Syrian government and opposition groups. Geopolitical implications. Russia's military intervention in Syria has had significant geopolitical implications, including increasing tensions with Western powers and contributing to a growing divide between Russia and the international community. The conflict has also had broader implications for regional stability, including the displacement of millions of Syrians and the spread of extremist groups like ISIS. Here are some additional details about Vladimir Putin's war against Syria. Relationship with Bashar al-Assad. Putin and Syrian President Bashar al-Assad have a long-standing relationship, and Putin has provided diplomatic, economic, and military support to the Syrian government since the start of the conflict in 2011. Putin has described Assad as a legitimate leader and has defended Russia's support for his government as necessary to combat terrorism in the region. Use of chemical weapons. The Syrian government has been accused of using chemical weapons against civilians, and Russia has been criticized for its role in supporting the Syrian government's use of these weapons. In 2018, a chemical attack in Douma, a town near Damascus, prompted a retaliatory strike by the United States, France, and the United Kingdom against Syrian government targets. Russia denied that the attack took place and accused Western powers of fabricating the evidence. Humanitarian crisis. The Syrian conflict has resulted in a significant humanitarian crisis, with millions of people displaced from their homes and in need of assistance. Russia has been accused of contributing to the crisis through its military intervention, which has targeted civilian areas and contributed to the destruction of infrastructure like hospitals and schools. Support for Kurdish forces. In addition to supporting the Syrian government, Russia has also provided support to Kurdish forces in northern Syria, who have been fighting against ISIS and other jihadist groups. This has put Russia at odds with Turkey, which sees the Kurdish forces as a threat to its national security. Ongoing conflict. While the Syrian government has retaken control of many areas previously held by opposition forces, the conflict in Syria is far from over. Rebel groups continue to operate in various parts of the country, and there are ongoing tensions between the Syrian government and Kurdish forces in northern Syria. The conflict has also contributed to regional instability, with implications for neighboring countries like Lebanon, Turkey, and Iraq.